Hey y'all, welcome to Church on Tap. It is the 5th Sunday of the month, and so we're doing Conversation Sunday like we like to do on the 5th Sunday of the month. And so I'm Gayle Tabor, I'm the pastor at Church on Tap, and I'm joined with Kelley Allers, Pastor Kelley Allers, who is at Grace in downtown Wilmington, and with Shawn who is the director of Cape Fear Beer and Hymns, as well as the pastor at St. Paul's United Methodist in Carolina Beach. And so today, our topic, because it's Halloween, y'all, woo!
Hey.
Like we're all excited. I'm kind of excited about Halloween and trick-or-treating and wondering about what kind of candy I'm going to get, because I'm all excited about that. Anyway, so it's Halloween, and so for Halloween, we're going to talk about satanic panic. Because, well, who doesn't need a little Satan thrown in, right?
I mean, we got some pastors,
So,
why not?
you know, what else do pastors talk about but, you know, Satan? And and maybe how we fight Satan, or maybe how we welcome Satan. No, kidding. Totally kidding. So, what do you guys think?
Well,
Satanic
this isn't the
panic.
Book of Job after all.
Satanic panic. Where are we?
So, apparently we are all back in it again. Like many things from the 80s, this has come around again. But I remember when I was a kid, we would go trick-or-treating. My church even had a haunted house. In fact, I distinctly remember our youth director being a head that was a severed head that was on a platter. It was they cut a hole in the thing and made a tablecloth, and we did a haunted house. By the time I was a teenager, though, in early to mid 80s, there was all this satanic panic. There was this idea that Halloween was associated with Satan worship, and with glorified devils and witches, and was tied to druid rituals where they sacrificed virgins, and I mean all kinds of horrible scare stories. And so Halloween, anything Halloween, trick-or-treating, haunted house, even the Halloween festival at our school was out. They changed the name to the Fall Festival then. And that all went together, I think, with a great fear about Satanism in the early to mid 80s that was overplayed in so many different ways. But I don't know what y'all's experiences with church were like, but that was my church and what happened with it.
What about you?
Mine was a little different. My father was our pastor, and he is a church history nut. Like that's his degree, his doctorate. He loves church history. So we saw it as All Souls Day, All Saints Day, Hallows Eve.
Oh, Hallows Eve.
And hallowed, by the way, means holy, like hallowed be thy name or hallowed ground. So we always celebrated Halloween, and my dad was probably the one, he was always the one on the roof scaring the kids in the church, and we kind of bypassed that whole satanic panic because although we were Baptists, we were more cooperative Baptists by that time and didn't kind of fall into that whole fear mongering, I guess. So I was kind of lucky. I've had Halloween my entire life, although I have seen the other churches in town who didn't like us because we did celebrate Halloween.
So I don't. Maybe I'm just too old. Because by the time you get to the mid 80s, I'm off to college, or get to the early 80s even, I'm off to college, and I don't remember. I mean, I remember that Halloween stuff became fall festivals, but even all while I was growing up, my mom was one of those. You know, like you never dressed up as a ghost, you never dressed up as a spirit or anything devilish. It was always like some sort of real life character. So you could be an army man, or you could be a nurse, or you could be a, you know, like, but it was always like a farmer. I mean, some sort of real life person, not some superhero kind of thing, or something that would be beyond reality. But that's just kind of my mom. So I'm not sure that really goes with anything other than my mom. And her beliefs, which are very conservative beliefs, and so that I'm sure that's where that comes from, is her very conservative bent.
I remember a lot of this taking place about the same time that a Christian comedian named Mike Warnke came to our town to do a concert. You know who I'm talking
Yes,
about?
I do.
Yeah, hilarious guy, really
Yes.
funny. But he had this whole autobiography about how he used to be a high priest in the Church of Satan. Incredible story
Yes.
about all this supernatural stuff and about how deeply he was involved in the Church of Satan. Turned out later on it was all a lie.
All wrong.
It was just something. It was a story he told for publicity.
Write a
It was
book.
never true. Yeah, he wrote a book and sold lots of books. And honestly, he should have just stuck to being a comedian. He was good at that. But this went in line with what everybody was afraid of, what everybody was kind of excited about. I say excited about because, in the church and in local community, people were afraid of it. In our high school, some of my friends were excited about it because what it did for them was provide an avenue for rebellion. And so my friends, especially who were into heavy metal, Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, really played up a lot of they played
blackness.
up the whole against the establishment kind of thing of Satanism. One friend even went so far as to get a satanic Bible, and really, for them it was an avenue for their rebellion. But that was very popular. Artists used that as a way of trying to promote themselves. Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil.
Yeah. It was the 60s, the late 60s, early 70s is when the Church of Satanism came to California. And that kind of kicked it off, where everyone was like, oh no, now they have a church, now that it's like, this is something to be really scared of.
Right.
And I remember, so then the 80s come, and when the hippie days, the love days, the Church of Satan, all that kind of created the 80s and what happened in the church in the 80s.
It was a pushback against that.
Yeah.
I remember, and it really, a lot of it revolved around music. Not only these heavy metal bands that were sort of openly using it as a promotional tool, but also then a lot of fear about what other bands might have been involved in witchcraft. The Eagles, Hotel California, Stevie Nicks, she's a witch, and all of these things. It got so bad at the time that one year we were away at summer camp, and one of our friends who stayed home helped my mom go through our record collection and throw out those ones that might be satanic.
Oh my goodness.
And I wasn't huge into heavy metal at the time. I didn't have any Black Sabbath records or anything, but Styx didn't make the cut.
Styx?
Adam and the Ants, actually.
Yes.
The Devil's in Your Stereo and record collection, remember, in Stand and Deliver, Adam Ant. And I'm trying to remember some other ones, but also Richard Pryor got thrown out at the same time.
Sorry,
mostly that was because of dropping the F-bomb a whole lot. But
and I remember the whole thing about you play a record backwards or make it,
or the toys that were
and that was
Skeletor,
and
the Castle and He-Man and all of those specific toys were created to make kids Satanists. That was all in the 80s.
Oh, and Smurfs even.
And Smurfs, Smurfs were in it.
Well, the Smurfs, of course.
But it actually kind of harkens back to how Halloween originated, because we know that there was All Martyrs Day or All Souls Day in May, and then the church fathers, wanting to kind of counteract Samhain, which was a traditional holiday at the time, along with other traditional village holidays. There are lots of them at this time. They wanted to find something to make that holy. So they literally took all of these farm rituals, these village holidays that happened as the winter was coming and the darkness was setting in, and tried to make it holy. So they called it Holy Eve, Holy Day, or Halloween, or Hallows Day. So the funny thing is they removed Halloween during the Satanic Panic, but it actually was called Holy Day so that they can make it holy. And they kind of just counteract the entire church history. And Samhain, all of those village holidays weren't evil. They were just a ritual time of marking the change of seasons for the village people.
Right.
And so they thought this is a great time to make a holy day. This is a beautiful time when everyone's already celebrating. There's feast. Why not make this a hallowed day or holy day? And then come to the 80s, oh, we're getting rid of the holy. We can't do the holy stuff.
So to me, the thing that just keeps jumping out is how much we have no idea why we do stuff that we do, or what the root of it is. And instead of being educated,
Yes.
instead of knowing the facts, and there's always that segment of society, and I'm going to say that segment of the church, that truly is always willing to jump off the cliff and, in a lot of ways, throw the good out with the bad. In an attempt to create holy, they are willing to just throw out what truly is holy and then make it unholy, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
They take the holy out of the holiday in a weird way. Isn't that something that we're not supposed to do? I don't know. One thing that I recently learned about, thanks to social media and the world of TikTok, that I, even being a pastor, I'm unaware of what all churches are doing, I figure. There is this new thing that happened, I guess, a couple of years ago called Halloweenn. And there's websites, there's churches, there's on sides of buses, they're like, don't celebrate Halloween, celebrate Jesusween, which, even if you're looking at the etymology, the word doesn't work. It should be Jesus-een, not Jesus-ween. Now, funny thing is, if you look into this, the stuff that it created, some of it I will not actually repeat here, even though we're at church on tap, talking about Jesusween and, body parts and whatnot. It is horrendous. They are forcing people, and the idea is that they hand out Bibles instead of candy, and their tracts that explain why you should celebrate Jesusween. It almost sounds sacrilegious to say that, doesn't it?
It does.
It does.
It sounds wrong just to have it coming out of my mouth, actually. Jesusween.
And of course now, my church had a haunted house when I was little. Now you see a lot of either churches or organizations on the more fundamentalist side of Christianity that do hell houses, right? And they have these sort of scenes that they've set up of people who are either going to hell or in hell. Invariably there's an abortion taking place, or I'm trying to think of some of the other things that make people go to hell, but crime or violence.
We don't
or
know
something
all of
like
those
that.
things. We weren't taught that in our
and then it's
schooling.
that whole, the whole thing ends with a scare you into heaven kind of pitch. But so much of that is just based in fear, and like you said, not actually knowing the history. I mean, knowledge is a powerful thing, and unfortunately, lack of knowledge is also a powerful thing.
Well, and what the thing, again, I keep coming back to this idea that is very popular in the news right now, is the whole Facebook, and Facebook running off of fear, that they recognize that the anger emoji was the more powerful emoji, and people who were hitting angry on posts, that they were much more able to be moved by social media. And I mean, I think that the church also has used that as a tool for moving people. The threat of hell. I can remember as a teenager going to a youth gathering that was for the whole county, or more than the county, and there was, you're sitting there and there's worship happening, and all of a sudden there men dressed all in black with guns and masks and combusting in the we're here to arrest you because you're worshiping. And it's this fear-mongering that you're going to be persecuted for being a Christian, which is something that we hear very often among people in the church. Well, I'm being persecuted. Well, okay, for what? I mean, what are you being persecuted for? No one is busting into church to tell you can't have
Not
church.
here in the U.S.
Not here.
No.
No one is, telling you how you have to practice your religion. Not in this country. And so, but that fear mongering, that fear is always what's driving a lot of that conversation.
And the devil ends up being a convenient persona in order to place that fear on something. Interestingly enough, like the name Satan originates in the Old Testament with Hasatan, who is not the devil of hell, but a member of the heavenly council who cruises around heaven with God. And if you remember in the book of Job, sort of makes a wager with God about
God's betting buddy.
Right. How faithful will Job be? Can I mess with him a bit? And God on one of his lesser days, I think says, well, okay, just don't kill it.
Right.
But the name Satan or Hasatan goes to the accuser. It's this idea of an accuser and one who sort of brings out all those feelings of shame and guilt, for which God provides mercy and grace. But then there's somewhat of a turn in the New Testament, and then definitely more into medieval Christianity toward this idea of Satan as the head devil of hell. And so in this cosmic battle with God over the future of humanity's souls. And it's really more of a post-Christian creation than something that comes directly out of the Bible.
And I just want to point out, and maybe this is joking and maybe it's not, is that even on God's council, and so you look at any church council, y'all, even on God's council, there's the devil that shows up. And so, you're like, if you're looking around your own church council, or, whatever church group is, and you have that one person who's always the one who is anti-everything, even on God's council, they're there.
So, interesting though, education we were talking about. Let's talk about how the devil got a pitchfork and horns, because that actually relates to Halloween.
Okay.
During Samhain actually began in Gaelic Ireland. This is pre-writing down things, so we don't know a whole lot, but we do know that it began as the pastoral feast time. So it's when not pastors like us, the actual shepherds, were moving their cattle and their sheep from the summer lands to the winter lands. And in that, they wanted their animals, male animals have horns, they wanted their animals to be safe through the winter and to produce children in the spring. So they would do feast, hoping that their horned beasts would move safely through the darkness in order to have babies so that they could keep feeding their families. That was what the original Samhain was about. It was also about overcoming the darkness with light. And at that time, they believed that because the world was getting dark and everything was dying, that the portals were open, that they could talk to those that they loved in the past.
Right.
So that was that time. They also would, in order to make crops not completely die during the winter, they would get long sticks and pitchforks and throw them into their fields, hoping that the plants in the fields, now this is early history, people, hoping that the plants in the fields would grow up as tall as the sticks and pitchforks that they threw into them. Like they were trying to show the plants what they needed to do once winter was over. Simple, actually beautiful in the idea of just hope that it gave people. Like it was a simple way, like we do things in our Christian faith to give us hope. It was a tradition that gave them hope, made them feel safer in the scary times that were coming. And it actually was replicated without them connecting. It was replicated throughout the Northern Hemisphere. We see, groups over here in early American, like in pre-United States America, doing the same thing. So during that time, the festivals often had horns and sticks or pitchforks because they were agricultural. And then, because during that time, the kids mostly, but also everyone in the church would dress up, which we'll go into that in a little bit, but would dress up. They would dress up as angels, as saints, and as these Satans or devils, because by this time it had become an idea that we chase the devil away. And they would run through the streets and into the church, and the saints and the angels would chase them. And it was a fun game for the kids. And as our early church fathers said, it made a mockery. Like Julian of Norwich said, it made a mockery of Satan. Like it was making a joke of Satan, making him what he was, just a joke. Hence now we have satanic panic and a scary pitchfork with the horns. That. Anyways, that's a little bit of education for you, since we're talking about education.
Which brings to mind, actually, a lot of these indigenous religions, or what some might call pagan religions, or natural religions, things like that. That a lot of people during the Satanic Panic days said was just early Satan worship, right?
Yes.
That all of these people, no matter if they're actually worshiping the devil or even had a cosmos that involved any kind of devil, that it was all devil worship. I think of Bobby Boucher's mom in The Water Boy, right? That's of the devil. That's of the devil. Anything that's bad, anything that presents some threat against your worldview, that's of the devil. That's of the and honestly, I mean, I can't tell you how often I heard that phrase, that's of the devil. And it was an easy way to dismiss something as a horrible threat and something that you absolutely should give no time to. But it's also a way of, I think, miscasting those who took part in some of these natural religions. I mean, those who are Wiccans or others who really are not worshiping a devil, and are not a threat. Whereas you get into actual Satanism, or Anton LaVey kind of Satanism, and they say that it is actually a worship of the self, first and foremost. That it is self-worship. And no, we don't have any of that going on in the United States.
No, there's no self-worship.
Yeah. Ow.
Or maybe there's just all self-worship.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Like everybody just wants their own way and their own idea to be the only way forward.
Which is actually very anti-Christ.
Yes, very.
It's the opposite of what everything he said.
So that then takes us to the Antichrist, right?
Yeah.
Because,
Why not?
Antichrist, that's where we are. So, 666, I was at yesterday getting my flu shot, and the person who was ahead of me in line, their total was 666. And they're like freaking out, because they have to go buy something else or put something back because that can't be their total. And this whole idea that, just that number is in and of itself evil, and that anytime it comes up, evil is happening. What say ye?
I say there are lots of Neros in this world. I think we should start referring to it as a Nero instead of a 666. But yes, I hear that a lot, and it's kind of like a joke in our circles, just because most of my circles involve people who have had to study this extensively and were like drained after studies in Revelation. But I think that it is a way to use your lack of knowledge against you. And I think that many people in this world will do that. That's why knowledge is power. Is that Schoolhouse Rock?
I'm not sure who says that, but
Yeah.
I have it on a shirt somewhere.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, that's exactly it. I remember, do you ever remember Chick tracts? They were these evangelical kind of comic tracts. It was a whole lot of scare you into heaven kind of thing. Scare, be afraid of the devil, and they talked about the mark of the beast. I remember the Chick tract that had this, and people had the number 666 tattooed on their forehead, and this idea that everyone would be marked with the number of the beast. And of course, what we learn later on, like you say, it's Nero. It represents the emperor, the power of the empire, and that aspiration to political power. And then, everyone who followed this power, their heads were marked with the mark of the beast. And I'm trying to think of a modern political analogy of people whose heads might be marked with something like, I don't know, like MAGA.
something that may be marked that they're more into the empire. Is that what you're saying than actually following Christ?
Yeah.
Like that they are more into a physical leader here on earth. Yeah, I think I've seen those hats before.
Yeah.
I might have seen one or two. I remember in the 80s, might have been in the 70s, when UPC codes were going to be. Like, this is the mark of the devil.
Yes.
Anything that had a UPC code on it. And eventually we were all
those.
going to have UPC codes on our foreheads to mark who
Yeah.
we were. And our social security cards would be like in this UPC code kind of thing.
Make it much easier to get through things like DMV. And
I mean,
stuff.
just imagine, you just got it here, there would be
Just
no
charge it to me.
there would be no show your ID at voters or anything. You just scan your forehead. Anyway, I digress.
So I'm a Halloween geek.
No.
Very much so. I mean, I'm just a church history geek. So one of my favorite things that I wish we actually did more of was the idea that comes from Samhain originally, but goes into Halloween, where because people were going into this time where they didn't have food, it was a feast day. So Hallows Eve, you weren't supposed to eat. Don't eat your candy on Halloween. So that you would
Wait!
So yes.
There's heresy right there. Sorry.
So that on the feast day, All Souls Day, followed by All Saints Day, followed by All Souls Day. It's actually a 3-day holiday. You should get all 3 days off from work. Religious freedom. So All Souls Day and All Saints Day and All Souls Day were feast days where you celebrated. So what they would do is they would leave food on their porch so that the bad spirits wouldn't get them. But the people who didn't have food would dress up, hide who they were, and go and take the food off the porches so that they had food for feast day. And it was a way for them to not be ashamed. It led to people believing that the spirits actually took some of the food, which is another story. Talk about knowledge is power. But it turned into what they would do in the church was make All Souls cakes, which were like, I think we said big, like donut muffins kind of things, these yummy little sweet cakes, and they would leave them out, and the kids would dress up and come pick them up for their families. So they would spend Halloween, which is where trick-or-treating comes from, sharing food with their neighbors who didn't have any in preparation for this feast day at the end of harvest, which I think is beautiful. I wish that churches on Halloween, instead of saying we're going to do trunk or treat or fall fest and keep it to our church, I wish they would spend that time handing out food to those in need. I think I will say one of our local churches I just saw is doing a canned food drive for Halloween. So I think Wrightsville Methodist, one of them is.
Good.
So that is what we should be doing for Halloween. If you want to celebrate the holy day, I think that we should be starting to do food drives.
That's a great idea.
Say that.
Although I don't think it has to be either or.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I think we should celebrate
we
in
do a
that
trunk
way.
or treat. And
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Trunk or treat's
it's
great.
so fun.
It's also giving. It's
It
sharing.
is also giving. But yeah.
Well, and the majority of people who come are people from the community, so that's so
Yeah.
candy.
That's what we do. We didn't have one the last 2 years because of the pandemic, but we always do a big feeding. Like we do hot dogs or we do chicken sandwiches, and we feed everyone in the neighborhood who comes.
It's a great idea.
And it's lots of fun. We have a lot of people, but pandemic took that away from us. But I think
Speaking of irrational fears, how many of you, when you were a kid, were warned not to eat any apples anybody gave you because they might have slipped razor blades into the apple?
Or take your kids' food, your kids trick or
We
treating
x-rayed
and
it
get
once.
it X-rated.
just for fun, we did X-ray it once.
That somebody didn't stick a needle in there.
Yeah, because that's what people were doing.
Well, and now
Okay, but does anyone know anyone who ever actually
No.
found a razor blade
No.
or a needle in any
But I
of
know
their
lots
candy
of
or
people
stuff?
whose second cousin's friend did.
Well, yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Of
the
course.
newest thing that I've seen is that people are putting drugged candy in Halloween. Like, you got to be careful because your kids might get candy with drugs to get them addicted to drugs.
Well, I've heard that before too.
So that's a big thing too.
If you find those, we need addresses.
So this reminds me of
That's expensive, so I don't think anyone's doing
the
that.
news story recently of the kindergarten teacher who had like the candy bowl where the kids could take candy,
Yes, I saw that.
and she had THC candy in there.
A kid brought in,
So I don't think the
gummies.
kids. I'm not sure that the kid brought him in, but
The kid, yeah,
pulled it out
someone
and took it home.
Which she said she bought at like Dollar General or something. So somewhere in that story, someone messed something up.
there's-
I don't think it was the teacher.
We do have a friend who is a judge who
Yeah.
had a case where the little THC gummies were a part of the evidence, and she was like, they look just like candy.
Yeah,
Like they look like children's.
but they're more
Gummies.
expensive. I mean, they
But,
are
yeah.
extremely expensive.
have
so I
no-
don't think anyone's going to give them to your kids.
I have no doubt that these ended up in there. This
Yeah.
is the teacher's stash, and she ended up putting them in
But
accidentally.
accidentally,
Anyway, we
teachers
digress.
deserve a little bit of a break.
Yes, they
I'm
do.
sorry, especially now
I
during the
vote for that.
pandemic. But anyways, on another subject, what are we
We
talking about?
digress.
We're talking about candy. It's Halloween.
It is candy on Halloween. So back to this idea of giving away. I think that as churches we don't do that nearly enough, and in a lot of ways have moved away from holidays and events that would encourage us to do that,
To give to others, not
to
just
give
within
to
our
others instead of
core group.
caring for ourselves. And I see a lot of that in a lot of churches, and I think that we're all guilty of it. You know, what have you done for me lately? Not what have I done for someone else lately.
and what is the worship of self again?
That's
And,
right.
and wait, we're back to the whole Satan thing.
Right. I mean, if you really want to battle Satanism, you battle against the spirit of me first, of look out for number one, of this idea that what's in it for me. I mean, really, to push back against Satanism, it's giving things away, caring for those in our community who are not as well.
I think also we keep hearing faith over fear, but it's applied to the wrong things. I think faith over fear means knowing that God is bigger than some silly costume you might wear, or somebody who believes something different than you. I mean, your faith. If you have faith in God as a Christian, you believe that He is, or she is, or they are all powerful, like all knowing, all powerful. And so the devil isn't something you fear if you have faith in an all powerful God. It's something you want to not mimic or copy or be like that selfish person. But
Right.
I think that creating and stoking fear is the opposite of faith in a way.
Very much so. I certainly, in fact, I've often preached faith over fear. In fact, like you say, not applied quite in the same way as we see it sometimes.
Get
But
vaccinated.
yes,
Sorry.
yes, please. But yeah, it's that same thing that fear undermines so much of what we want to do, and fear actually, I think, lies at the root of so much sin. You go back to the story of the fall in Genesis 3, and you have the serpent, who was not Satan, by the way. That was something John Milton came up with later on. There's never any indication that that's the devil early on, but the serpent tempts Eve, and this fear that there's something you could have, and you're not going to get it. And it's also a need to control, right? Because the idea is that if you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you'll become like gods yourselves.
Yep.
Right.
Raise yourself up to that plane. I don't want to be on that plane.
Right. But this fear that somehow there's something that could be yours that's not, right? That you're missing out. The fear of missing out. That's the
FOMO.
the one of FOMO. Right. Which I think motivates so many people to do so many stupid things.
So, are you guys going to be trick or treating?
I'm going to be giving out candy. Yeah, like I say, we're doing trunk or treat at church.
Yeah.
So
That's
I'll
cool.
I'll dress up in a costume and fix up my car with lights and hand out candy, and so I think
I'm not one to do that.
I think I may have to break out one of my old costumes this year. It's just a yellow hat and a T-shirt with yellow writing that says "Life," and then I get a bunch of lemons.
When life hands you.
Yeah.
I love it.
Although the candy I would give out then is lemon heads. I wouldn't actually just give lemons. But what I did last time was I did give people lemons and set up a stand where they can make lemonade.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a cool idea.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Some of my pastor friends are wearing their collars and dressing up as Daffy Duck. I was like, that's great. Like a whole bunch of them in different areas across the United States.
Oh, that's funny.
A Daffy Duck will be coming to a church near you.
That is pretty funny.
I was like, that's brilliant. Way to use
Never
because it's
thought
on
about
Sunday, so they're like, I might as well just add a bill and then I'm there.
And you're good to go. That's hilarious. What are you dressing up as?
I'm actually going to, for the first time, my kids are grown now, so I am going to an adult costume party. Is that how I want to put that? Where a group of grown-ups are going to dress up and celebrate Halloween.
A costume
I'll say it that way, a costume party. And so now I'm going, and it's here, so I don't know. I'll be searching through my closet trying to find something, I guess. I'm kind of going for that, like, some kind of pastor thing, maybe, I don't know, or who knows. Normally every year I'm a child because I'm normally at a child's, like, our fall festival. So what I do is I dress up as one of the kids, which has been like a joke for years. But I don't think going to an adult party it works as well.
That works as well.
But I will let you know at some point. Maybe the next time we have this conversation.
Yeah.
That would be very interesting. Probably Party City has like a sexy priest
think.
costume because like for every costume you can think of, they have like a sexy version of it, which is it's just so awful in some cases.
The nurse ones.
And I want to know why they're never for men.
Yes.
Well, I have seen some, but generally it's like a sub-segment of the male population.
Wait a minute. So do you think that it was... Okay, so it's been a long... I've been with kids every Halloween for 25 years. So do you think that there'll probably going to be some of those at this Halloween thing I'm going to?
Possibly. That could be interesting.
I mean, I've been out on Halloween with adults before.
I had a friend who, in a former lifetime, was with the Traveling Male Review, and one year we were getting to play Santa Claus at the church for the kids, and he said, "Do you have a Santa costume for me?" And I said, "Yeah, we have costumes." He said, "Because I have a Santa costume, but you probably wouldn't want me to wear it."
And that will be on our Christmas podcast, Christmas gathering that we do. We're going to talk more about that.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
This is a guy who's now married with 2 kids and, has the whole Ozzie and Harriet family life and all that. Great guy, by the way.
Some of the greatest people come from some interesting paths.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we should talk some about, like, the witches in Salem. Because I mean that's a whole segment of history that
pulls out of this.
That is it fits in with this, but it's also that predating the 1980s. So it's kind of that middle area. It's not modern, but it's not so ancient that it's like I don't know how I want to say that.
It's part of our U.S. history.
Yes. And this whole idea that in order to prove you weren't a witch, you had to die. And, that's just so weird. But then I bring that forward to where we are today, and like, to prove that you don't have to take a vaccine, you die. Anyway, it's a weird convolution in my head.
An either or dichotomy. It's not fair. Well, the saddest part was most of Salem was bad. It was around the world. I mean, the witch, like satanic panic, the witch craze was around the world. And it was, the sad part is, in a lot of it was those village herbal remedies and traditions that they were carrying on that came from prehistory. It came from, they were beautiful traditions.
natural healers.
Natural
And-
healers. I mean, people who help. I mean, they're the reason we have so many people alive today is because they helped with childbirth in ways that other people couldn't. But it also gave them a certain power. When you have the power to heal somebody, even if it's with some medicines you have, it gives you a certain power. Oddly, I'm just realizing something. When you have the ability to heal someone, it gives you power and control, and that makes people scared when you have that power and they don't understand it. And that's kind of like
Sort of like vaccines.
doctors and vaccines. We just keep going in circles, folks. Like, history just keeps going in circles.
But there's another aspect to the witch trials too, and it is misogyny, of course, because by and large it was women who were tried and killed for being witches. It was suspicion of women who have too much power and a fear of that. So that must be, God obviously ordained men to be in control in their mindset. So so these women who have so much power, that is obviously an evil power at work, and it needs to be suppressed. We have a friend who used to be a pastor and now is not, and she proudly claims that she is a witch, but she doesn't mean it so much in that sort of magical kind of way, but traces it back to early witches being feminists who fought against patriarchal authority, and so kind of claims that in that sense of a sort of feminine power, and we've often seen when men feel threatened by women with power, they react in bad ways, and that goes from the Salem witch trials to today even.
Right. Well, even in the early church, when you see that.
Goes back to
Saint
Constantine.
Julian. Yes.
Like when Constantine decided that Christianity was going to be the best choice for him, and he legalized it. Didn't make it nationalist yet, but legalized it and kind of forced everyone to follow him. What was happening is all of those women on the outskirts and the farms and villages that weren't the big city people that were friends with his were practicing these ancient traditions, and that's where we get pagan from. Pagan just means, like I've said this before, a redneck is basically what a pagan is. Back in Constantine's time, anyone who was country, who did things a little different than big city, was called a pagan. And so Constantine said, either you do the Christian thing, and so he took the practices he liked out of those pagan ways, those redneck ways, and he said, we're going to keep these are going to be Christian, but the ones generally associated with women, like midwifery and herbal remedies, we're going to call those pagan and anti-Christian. And so eventually we have paganism and witchcraft because a ruler, not the Bible, but a ruler needed to find useful ways to make Christianity work for him. And same thing happened with the Puritans. And oddly, it seems like the same thing's happening today with Jesus-ween and all this other stuff. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to make this work for me.
No, not Jesus-ween.
Well, but there's a whole lot of the issues with so much of Christianity, is that there is a segment that decides what works for me, and what am I willing to do or not willing to do. And if this falls into my box, then it's good Christianity. And if it falls outside of my box, it's bad and therefore of the devil and not Christian at all. And I think that we have shown that that's throughout history. And it's not only in our days today, but in our history for generations, that has been the way that this goes. And so my thing is, like, if you see yourself thinking, well, this is who God loves, who I love, God who hates who I hate, this fits only in my little box and it doesn't challenge me outside of my box, then maybe that's not really of God at all.
Possibly it's,
I would
as
go
you were
stronger
saying,
than
it's of
possible.
oneself.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to agree with that. It's when it becomes about me,
Yeah.
and not God and us. There's that thing in the Bible we keep talking about, love God and love others as you want to love. That's that section of the Bible that's kind of important.
So inconvenient.
It is inconvenient.
Yes.
Really.
But if it's not, doesn't fall into that,
Yeah.
Are you kind of figuring out? Are you still trying to come back to God? Where are we at if it doesn't fall into those two things?
Yeah.
It's time to get moving. Your watch just
Yeah,
told me.
my watch is saying that it's time for me to stand up. So, I think that we've come to really a nice conclusion here that you know, Christianity, if it's not loving other people, is not Christianity. Christianity, if it's not loving God, isn't Christianity. And those really are the two factors that will tell you if what you are doing or the people that you are around are behaving in a Christian way. If they are loving God and loving each other and others around them. And so, go get some good candy.
Yeah.
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween, y'all.
Halloween.